Are you immersed in a sea of business advice and education, but not sure what to embark on first? Instead of adding to the ocean of information, we're here to help you navigate it like a pro. The Wayfinding Growth podcast will help you take a deep dive into new actionable strategies, tools, and tactics to help you grow. So start charting a course for business growth as you explore a better way to grow further, faster, with your hosts, Remington and George B. Thomas.
And here we are back again with episode what will be 5. That's right, 5. And yes, I got it right so that Remington doesn't get it wrong. Just kidding. Remington, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, George. How about you?
Dude, I am loving life. I had the opportunity to edit the last episode. I had the opportunity to listen to the episode when it was edited, and then I went back and listened to it a third time. There are some really great gems for the listeners this week. Like, what was just kind of your general thought, like I'm talking 50,000 foot level, of EOS, Marisa Smith, episode 4 of the Wayfinding Growth podcast?
Yeah, so, as I talked about in the episode, I am no stranger to EOS and especially the book Traction. But right around the same time that I read it the first time, I saw Marisa speak at Inbound about it. And it's one of those things so EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, is really clever that's what they called it because it's one of those things that I don't think people really think about their business as an operating system. A lot of times they think about their business as cash, or they think about their business as service. And it's really one of those things that has to be a well-oiled machine. Overall, the podcast, I think Marisa talked about a lot of things, and I really loved how she started to get really, really jazzed up about halfway through when she started talking about it. It was, it's pretty cool to see, but you could tell she's super passionate about that. And I always thought she was a passionate person when she talked about marketing, but it's like she took it to that next level.
Yeah, definitely. It was fun to really be part of that. And I even alluded in last episode how I was part of a conversation that we had historically about that kind of marketing transition to EOS. And I'll tell you my general thoughts. Actually, before my general thoughts, you just said something. I want to go a little sideways for a second. You said people think of their business in this way, in that way, a couple different ways that you mentioned there. And it's funny because if they're not doing something like EOS, if they're not implementing a system, if they don't have processes, they might actually think of their business as like a noose around their neck, right? Which makes this episode that Marisa did. And by the way, if you haven't listened to it, if you're listening this day, right now, for the first time, episode 5, go back and listen to 4, because I think it's this type of system that you can put in place that does free you up to enjoy your business, that does kind of free you up to do things that you might have before thought were impossible to do. But here's my general thoughts of the episode, really twofold. One, not that I haven't thought this before, but as we did the interview, I really started to understand and realize how smart Marisa Smith is just as a human being. And man, she is a great example of following what you love to do, right? We just kind of alluded to the marketing, to the EOS implementer thing. Like, I love people that have the guts to just kind of say, man, this is what I want to do. I'm not sure how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to go there. The other thing on general thoughts is EOS sounds like something to me that almost every business, and I'm not going to say should do, but I think it's something that every business should at least try, right? To see if it's a fit. What are your thoughts on that, Remington?
Yeah, to take that a step further, I think that every business and employee should understand. I haven't had a chance to read some of the other books. I've read Get a Grip and Traction, but I know that they mentioned they've got another one from the employee's point of view, and I think, especially as everyone talks about millennials, whether that's pro or cons or any of those things. I think a lot of times people stop, and a business owner may be too passionate about, this is my business, and the millennial may not realize that it's a business. And I'm polarizing that, but it's one of those things that I think everyone understanding this whole operating system really starts to make it like, oh, like I'm a cog in a wheel, but it's actually a cog in a wheel that actually affects change or does something. And I think that any business and any employee needs to understand their place in it. And any business needs to make sure that they point out their vision, so that people can really kind of grab onto something and run with it. And I think that the EOS, or at least what I understand, and from that, from Marissa's chat, really starts to talk about what that looks like and how she helps people get there.
Yeah, without vision, you get nowhere. Actually, some say without vision, you're dead. There's one other thing that I remember from the episode, and I'm curious, Remington, if you remember the word that was used. Do you remember the word?
The one we need to go define?
Yeah, no, the Scrabble word, right?
Yeah, that's the one I'm trying to figure out. No, I remember we talked about it.
So circuitous? Is that
circuitous?
Is that how you say it? Yeah. Well, I'm wondering. Right. Yes. Yeah. Right. So I'm wondering if any of the viewers, any of the listeners, have actually had a chance to use that in the Scrabble game. If so, tweet us out. I'm at George B. Thomas. He's at Remington Begg. By the way, if you're curious, it's CIRCUITOUS. Is how you spell that for your Scrabble word. Navigational tools, Remington. That was a very interesting section. I went into this episode thinking it's EOS. It's not like video. Video, of course, there's going to be tools. Podcasting, of course, there's going to be tools. I went into it thinking that there wasn't going to be any things, but there's things.
Right.
What were your thoughts on the navigational tools section?
Sure. So, the big thing being some of the tools that she says are available, some of the ones you can, like the foundational tools, I think she said there are 6 or 7 of them. Those obviously a very big piece of it. But I know the VTO is the Vision Traction Organizer. And it's funny because I could see that being a way that marketing agencies strategically plan out strategies for 3-month plans and long-term goals and all that. So the VTO, I think, is one of the biggest tools for us. And I know that we have a PowerPoint presentation where we've built it out and modified it over the years. But that's probably one of the biggest tools that I know from Traction. But I loved that. And this goes back to the inbound marketing, Marissa, her history, and being super on board with the marketing and the content. Whenever we asked her about resources, she didn't necessarily give her resources. She's like, go check out their YouTube, go check out their blog, go check out their stuff. And that reminds me of, this kind of content first mentality, as you say a lot of times in your talks, a Wikipedia of your space. She's obviously built into this community about that. But the books are a perfect example of that.
Yeah, it's funny because there's this thing that when you were talking about that, Remington, that hit my mind. And it's you can either send people to Google or you can be the human Google and pool resources from different places. And for sure, Marissa was doing that. Speaking of books, dude, I was I knew of Traction, and she's like, yeah, there's 5 books, and so some of the listeners might not know what's actually going on with these books. And so I just wanted to give a little synopsis of what I would call the big 3 of them. There's more, and we've linked in this episode's show notes to the actual books. By the way, in episode 4, we linked to the downloads that Marissa mentioned. So you can always go over to wayfindinggrowth.com/4. It's that easy. The number 4, not like FOUR or FOR, the number 4, and get to that episode, which, by the way, you can do for 1, 2, and 3 as well, and probably episode 57 when we get there. But I digress. Traction, it's actually Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business, which is funny because in the episode we were talking about the different colors, yellow and orange. Well, how about just the rest of the title? Might actually help as well. But inside this book, Traction, you're going to learn the secrets of strengthening the 6 key components of your business. You'll discover simple yet powerful ways to run your company that will give you and your leadership team key point there. We'll talk about that later. More focus, more growth, and more enjoyment. I think we mentioned that at the beginning of this. Based on years of real-world implementation in thousands of companies, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, #EOS, is a practical method for achieving the business success you've always envisioned. And then after that, she mentioned the book Rocket Fuel, which is actually Rocket Fuel, the one essential combination, which is an interesting title. But in Rocket Fuel, it details the integral roles of the visionary and integrator and explains how an effective relationship between the two can thrive. You'll also get advice to help visionary-minded and integrator-minded individuals, how to get them to find one another. When these two people come together to share their natural talents and innate skill sets, this is a little buzzworthy. Buzzwordy. But anyway, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'll get your thoughts here in a second. I sort of get what this one means, but this one feels very salesy versus the first book, Traction. I totally got what they're saying. They have the power to reach new heights for virtually any company or organization. Of course they do. Last but not least, and not last because there's 5 books, but the last one I want to talk about was Get a Grip, an entrepreneurial fable. That sounds a little exciting. I like a fable here and there, but filled with familiar situations, real-world characters, and detailed, fully applied tools. Get a Grip vividly illustrates the right way to implement EOS in an enjoyable fable format, making it easy for you to translate this story into results for your own business. That sounds like the George version. To be honest, like, here, have the kid version. I mean, the George version of the whole methodology. What are your thoughts on these books? Did you immediately say to yourself, I know we're kind of built the same, like, crap, I've got a lot of reading to do.
Yeah, I've actually, so you got me hooked on this whole audiobook thing. So I went, crap, I have a lot to listen to instead of just reading, especially with a 2-year-old at home. I can't read at home anymore. That was nice while it lasted. But so Traction. Yeah, I'll start with Traction. So Traction, it was like methodology, like to the nth. Highlighted pain points and issues. And again, that's the one I mentioned that I've read 6, going on 7 times now, and I've picked up a different piece of that at any given step in the entrepreneurial life cycle that we've gone through with Impulse. So when things were down, I read it, and I read about issues that hurt and could find ways to solve it. And then when things are up and you're in the growth cycle, it's trying to figure out, all right, how do I delegate and elevate type thing. And one of the biggest takeaways I had from Traction in general, across all of it, is the right people in the right seats. And like, do they want it? Are they capable of it? Were the two big things to kind of identify where they were. And it was a huge exercise, and another one of those tools that I believe we referenced in episode 4. So Traction's huge. It's funny, I just went out to the bookcase to see whether I had it, because I have 4 or 5 copies, and I believe they're floating around with different agencies and different companies that I've talked to. Because as soon as they start talking about issues, I'm like, you should probably read this. And I stick a big fat sticker in there saying, remember, I gave you this book, because I'll call it back one day. Sounds like if you're listening and you have my book and you're not reading it, you should provide it back. But yeah, so Traction's fantastic. The funny thing with the Rocket Fuel, visionary versus the integrator, this is very much Rachel, my wife, and myself, right? So I'm the guy that's like, ooh, idea, squirrel, figure this out. And Rachel's like, pump the brakes, right? And I think that a lot of people who are, if they go into business with their significant others, there's going to be that, I think of all these different things. And then there's the people that actually try and put everything together. Rocket Fuel kind of addresses that, because there's also, it's a 2-sided coin. They can work really well together, but if they don't understand each other, then that can be kind of catastrophic too. So I started listening to that one. I hadn't finished that yet. Get a Grip, the fable. This was like real world stories about other people. I've heard. I have not read this one, but I think what it does, and they did really well. If you think of this from an inbound marketing point of view, they talked methodology. They talked about major issues that the people have to like address. And then now they're talking about like real life case studies, and they made them all books. So imagine someone that goes through and reads all 5 of those books. Can you say ready to pay?
Oh, yeah.
They realize it's work. You know what I mean? So they did really well there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned you got to have somebody there to pump the brakes, because if you know me, my wife always says that I have too much gas. Hey-oh, take that however you want to. All right, well, Wayfinding Growth community, I have a question for you. Remington has a question for you. Actually, the whole team behind our podcast has a question for you, and that is, and I'll go off of the word that Remington used when he talked about our PowerPoint deck, is that we've modified it over the years. How have you modified EOS to your company? What tools are you using? We'd love to know. We'd love to give you a shout out. We'd love to talk about how you're getting your own success. Another way that you could get some success if you are a HubSpot user, because this week's episode is sponsored by our HubSpot Launchpad workshops at Impulse Creative. If you're a HubSpot user or you're thinking about starting to use the HubSpot tool and you want to hit the fast forward button or gain more ROI, that's return on investment, people, that you have historically with the use of it, then give us a call. I'll give you the link to the page. It'll be in the show notes. We can come out. We'll do a 1 or 2 day Launchpad workshop and get you rolling in the deep. Isn't that a song? I think that's a song, Rolling in the Deep. I'll have to check it out. Anyway.
I thought it was Rolling on the River.
Oh, there's that one too. I wonder how many rolling songs. There's got to be one about rolling with a doobie. That's for Marcus Sheridan of the Sales Line right there, because he used to say that word in the Hubcast all the time. Let's move on
He still does.
He still does. That's funny. Let's move on to charting the course, Remington. What were your thoughts on charting the course in the episode with Marisa Smith on EOS?
I really liked the 2 things that she talked about were like how to bring it up. How to bring up the issue that you think that the business needs improvement. And, you know, we talked about it from the employee point of view, but also from the owner point of view. So going back to my visionary, like pump the brakes. Oh, I got a new system. I think it'd be really cool. And then is that just one new thing, or are we getting adoption from everyone? So I really liked how she talked about bringing someone in for that initial conversation to get everyone jazzed and excited about it, regardless of whether you chose her or another implementer for that matter, to kind of dig in. It kind of speaks to get everybody on the same page and understanding from the horse's mouth about what could be, and then see whether that's a direction that everyone wants to go. That also kind of tied in, and I keep going back to the inbound talk from Dharmesh last year, where he talked about vectors. I think it was an Elon Musk conversation he had, or aligning all the vectors.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 100% the same language that essentially is trying to happen in that initial meeting. So I thought that was really, really cool. The second one, I think the value of an implementer, right? Because it's almost like a mediator, I feel like. And I thought it was really cool how she said, she's more the proctor or the person facilitating. She's not like the one telling everyone what they should be doing, because as she put it, the answer's already in the room. So, that's one thing that regardless of whether you get an implementer or not, make sure you realize and you give everyone in the room the opportunity to speak up, because a breath that was given to talk could turn into the next great idea or something that no one really thought about.
Yeah. It's funny you brought up the Elon Musk. I'm going total sideways, by the way, listeners and viewers.
That's cool.
You brought up Elon Musk and Dharmesh, and I thought to myself, if I ever find myself in a room with Dharmesh and Elon Musk and maybe add in, I don't know, one other person, like, I don't know. It could probably be anybody. It could be like, I don't even care. Like
Han
a third
Solo?
person. Well, Han Solo couldn't happen for real. I almost wanted to say Jerry Garcia, but that would be way over the top. But anyway, actually, maybe even just those two. I think after being in a room and being able to talk to them and download a little bit of their brain, I'd be like, okay, pack it up, boys. It doesn't get any better than that right there. That's a little crazy.
Yeah.
So my 2 things were And the one is really just super simple. And I think it's actually the key to almost anything that we're successful with in life is get started. Like, go. Hit the gas. Don't be afraid of the gas. And I liked how Marisa Smith talked about no matter if it's the down and dirty way or if it's the base camp way that she mentioned or if it's a full-blown EOS implementer strategy, just start getting going and the entire leadership team, get them focused on those 6 key metrics and find out if it's a right fit or not. And Remington, it's funny, you in your section there a hot minute ago said, bringing somebody in to like get that buy-in. The other part that I'll add to what you said is, and I've always said this, it's hard to be a preacher in your own town. Right. Mm-hmm. And so because they know who you are, they've known you since you were Billy, like 6 years old. And now you're behind the pulpit and they're like, oh, I remember when Billy stole a sucker from the grocery store. And so it's funny because you might want to do this EOS thing, but because they look at you as, Bobby in HR or Johnny, the CEO, like it's just hard for you to be the preacher on this one. And so that's with any workshop. Even if it was our HubSpot Launchpad, like any workshop, that's really kind of almost the number one thing that it's supposed to do is be able to get that buy-in and get that going. So for sure, that was super interesting to me. And here's the thing. I loved the part when we started to talk about you don't have to be the owner or a leadership member to create this change. And I even kind of jokingly said, look, buy a book. And gift it to their wife or their husband so that it ends up on the end table. And if there's one thing out of this whole podcast, however many episodes we do, and really drilling into it right now, is I want everybody to realize that they can be an agent of change in their little section of the universe. So I really liked that part. I like that part. So Remington, I'm a big Bermuda Triangle fan, but we try to figure out ways how to hack the Bermuda Triangle. What were your thoughts on this section and she had a ton. Like there was, if you go back and rewind episode 4, just the Bermuda Triangle part, there's like there's quite a few hidden gems. Remington, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, the Bermuda Triangle, the thing where people can get really caught up is that they worry about feelings too much. And I don't mean that from the boss that doesn't care about anyone or the guy or gal that's super harsh, right? What I mean is that I think sometimes we overthink bringing up things to create a conversation, and sometimes we get stuck in this analysis paralysis whether we should open our mouth. And she talked about that in a couple different ways. And the cool thing is figuring out tools that we can use, and we meaning anyone, in order to kind of break through that. And I think it's as simple as this is a very conversational way of sharing EOS right now, this episode 4 and episode 5. But, the other way to do it is the book. And then the other ways to do it, I'm sure if you talk to an implementer, then you'd be totally good. But if let's say you're getting started and that there's a problem and you feel like there's a noose around your neck, which was one of the conversations that we had previous, then say something to someone else in the organization. If it's to the point where you feel that way, you need to have some candor and talk about it, because you don't have to suffer alone. And chances are, if you feel there's a noose around your neck, someone else either sees that or feels that too in your organization. Sorry, that was super deep.
I almost feel like I don't even have to share anything after that. My goodness. But I will. For me, it came down to stay focused. And when I say stay focused, I mean laser focused. And the way that she kind of talked about this in my mind, where I pulled this out of, was you can't be going into this all half-arsed. Right? Well, I just kind of modified that last word. I was going to say half but you can't go in like, you got to go full throttle. And
Right.
and another way that she said this, which I thought was interesting, is you got to make sure that everybody's rowing in the same direction versus rowing in different directions. Again, it goes to the buy-in, but the buy-in is the focus, being laser focused on the tactic that you're trying to pull in here. So, I mean, that to me was just super dope, super useful, especially in our society right now. Like, it's so hard. Like, I know both of us, we're like squirrel dudes. Like, there's a lot of people like that out there. And so when it comes to this, when it comes to the system, the processes, the thing that you're going to do for your business, you got to at least kind of focus, put blinders on it, and be laser focused.
That's where that North Star thing for us is, right? Is it a North Star metric? Is it a vision of something? Are you painting the picture for your staff to see it? I think that if you don't have a North Star metric, or you don't know which direction you're trying to go, then it causes real issue. And using this, it's funny that she says rowing in different directions. Now I have to figure out whether that was something in the book, but or in one of the books for that matter. So I explained in more of the tumultuous time at Impulse, I explained that it has felt like we were on a boat with paddles like river rapids. And then now the design of what we want to be is very synchronized in a very long, kind of, I forget is it crew? Where everyone's rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
Yep. So going from imagine going down a river rapids using your oars to slow you down and like point you in the right direction. It still works. You still get where you need to go. But then also crew, where everyone's very synchronized and moving in the same direction, same thought process as the vectors. And that is what traction really helps you to do overall. So that was a big thing. Understanding you need that, I think, is one of the biggest issues in the Bermuda Triangle, is the people are too busy to stop and think.
Yeah. And by the way, just so everybody knows, we are continuing with episode 5, our Scrabble theme, because Marisa started it. Remington just busts out at least a 37-point word, tumultuous.
Tumultuous.
Rewind it. Listen to it. You've got some
Don't ask me to spell
bad
it.
Scrabble words. Well, I put it in our document, and spell check did knock it out, but I'm not going to bet that it's right. It could totally be a different word. I always love spell check when they're like, I know all the words in the English language, and this looks like none of them. I'm like, thanks. I feel great. But anyway, you know what makes me feel great today, Remington?
What's that?
Is Captain Killing It section of our podcast. What do you got for us this week? Like, do you know anybody out there that on the internet is really killing it in a good way? Or maybe that you've seen that is like killing it as in, wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
really? Like, wow.
There's a lot of wow reallys for me. I'm just going to we're going to have an avatar. His name's Joe Bob Jim Bob. Right? Because you can't track that down to an individual. Well,
I like that guy.
Maybe. But like, imagine the disclaimer that that this guy is, I think it's like at the end of Law and Order, they have does not represent a real character. Anything else is.
Are we talking about 40% of the LinkedIn community?
Yeah.
Are we talking about 40% of the LinkedIn community? I'm just asking.
Yeah. So a big issue that I see is, time and time again, and half the reason I think half the people on Twitter is to either poke the bear or to have conversations about politics. Now, there's time and a place for politics and business. Polarizing views about something as a employee or a business is going to polarize people's view on you. So I have seen a handful of tech founders being very, very abrupt on social. And you have to think about how that affects all of the people underneath you. Now, you could have 100% buy-in of your thought, your beliefs, as a company, but you're representing your brand. I think you have to be very careful. And I'm not telling people to hush up, but I think that there's a lot of people who polarize things or get so crazy about stuff that could really cause future issue and loss of opportunity on both sides of the coin. No one's specific, but I know that there are some I've seen this week a lot. And for some reason, I don't think it's that big a deal in regards to other political things going on, that other than being a lit fuse. So don't be a lit fuse. Be a captain killing it and just kick ass at your business rather than worrying about things you cannot directly affect today.
Yeah, and if you're wondering, what does he mean by a lit fuse? He's basically just saying, don't be a douchebag. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah.
You know, and here's the thing. There's a time and a place, people, and the tweeters, my Facebook and LinkedIn and anywhere else that you think is a public platform, it might be not the time and place. Just saying, you know, as we close this out, Remington, I got some closing thoughts. I'm sure you do too. You know, I love how Marisa shared the story of, and I'm using air quotes here, the people who are viewing this on our YouTube channel, which, by the way, you should go and hit subscribe so you can get these automatically, can see my air quotes. Yeah, please. But the people who are listening, hey, you're probably climbing Mount Everest or flying a jet plane, which is cool because we know you're awesome like that. But I love when she told the story of, hey, I just want a vacation, or hey, I just want to be home when the kids get home, versus like this, I want to grow a massive company, I want to have 150 employees. Like, no. There's this EOS, this system, this processes, the businesses that you're building and running, they can equal like small, what might seem very humble, but very gratifying and freeing goals, right? And she even mentioned like listing out those goals and being able to say, and I love this part, like it's probably my favorite part of the podcast, where she goes, because you could feel her joy in it, where she says, hey, we did that. And it's just that sense of being able to visualize the goal, being able to feel the completion of the goal, and realizing that now you can get amped up for the next journey of the goal that you've set before you, because obviously you're this type of person who is creating that. I really love that part of the podcast. Remington, fine, sir. What about you?
Yeah, so I'm with you 100% on that. Like, it doesn't like your goals, your North Star could be personally or professionally completely different than the company's, as long as they align. And vacation, I can relate to. You know, we've been hustling like crazy. Hashtag hustle, hashtag grit, hashtag trying to be human. You know, that whole thing, that could be just a general goal that one person has. So totally on board there. The other thing is she kept bringing it up, and she brought up a couple times that it's a long process. I think she said it. How did she say it? She said, it took a long time to get yourself in this position. Don't expect to get out of this position, you know, in a month or in 2 months. Like it's almost like a learned thing. You have to, you know, habitually put yourself out of it in general. And that's not just you, that's your entire organization. So it takes time. She referenced a year or two, a couple times to hit goals. I'm sure if you read Traction, you know what rocks are. Rocks, of course, would not be 2 years out in some cases. But realize, as with anything good, it takes time.
You know, it's funny, Remington. Like, I think about, like, look, you've been eating jelly donuts for 8 years. A week's worth of walks? It's not going to cut it. Look, Wayfinding Growth community, we want to know, what were your major takeaways? What did you like about the show? Let us know. It's wg@impulsecreative.com. We'll send right to Remington and I with those. We'd like to look at them, think about them. It's all about learning and growing together. You know, hey, here's the deal. We need to set sail. Any parting words, Remington, before we close this out?
No, I'm going to pull a card out of DG and DC's playbook from Seeking Wisdom. I want to see who can give us our first review. So that's my challenge. He says 6 stars. I'll settle for 5, but tell him what you think about this. It would be really helpful for us.
Yeah, definitely go over to the iTunes, leave a rating, a review. Look, Remington said 5. Shoot, I'll take 4. I'll just take I'll take the
leave
words.
us a review.
Yeah, we love it. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Thanks for engaging with us. Thanks for your listenership. If you have questions on any of the topics that we cover, or you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, make sure you reach out. He's Remington at impulsecreative.com. I'm George at impulsecreative.com. Let us know where you're trying to navigate your business. If you're watching this on YouTube, I already said it once, but hit that subscribe, hit the bell for instant notifications. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, make sure you go over to iTunes, leave us a rating and review. Or the best thing you could do for us is just look over at the person next to you on the subway, or your friend or a family member at dinner who might be also trying to do this thing called business, and let them know about us as well. Until next time, I'm George B. Thomas, and he is
Remington Bag.
And we're saying, leave the dock of mediocrity and set sail into the future success.